Welcome to the Women in Investing podcast, Champions with Checkbooks, where the members of our network talk about their investment journey, their learnings, and white spaces in the market that are waiting to be disrupted. Women in Investing is a community of capital allocators and venture capitalists. We were founded in 2017 to create a platform for women investors, and we're excited to say that after hundreds of meetups, masterclasses, mentoring programs, and collaborations, we're over 400 members strong. We hope you enjoy and benefit from these conversations.
Hi, I'm Maya Chandrasekaran representing the Women in Investing Network today. Our guest today is literally one of the OGs of the Indian VC industry. She was part of the founding team of Seed Fund in 2006, before any of us even knew what VC meant, is the founder of Stanford Angels, and more recently founded Aureolis Ventures, investing in innovative companies making social and environmental impact. She's seen so much of the evolution of this space, and I can't wait to jump into the conversation with Paula Mariwala. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Maya. It's a real pleasure to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. To kick off, you've had such an interesting career trajectory. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a VC and your journey to getting here?
Sure. I never set out for a career remotely linked to venture capital. I was not a finance person. I don't have a degree in business or have never really taken a finance course in my entire academic career. I come from a business family, and my father was a first-generation entrepreneur who started India's first tech company, literally in 1966. So
Wow.
while I had seen entrepreneurship at close quarters, I had really not set out to become an investor. I actually studied physics, went on to Stanford to further study applied physics, worked in very much technology-led businesses, and actually, when I was at Stanford, worked in startups, which were really using technology, which were developed in labs to commercialize and bring them into venture fundable companies. So that was my exposure to venture investing, much more on the sidelines. When I moved back to India after about 10 years in the US, I was running a division of fiber optics and optical communication in the company started by my father. So it really didn't involve looking at balance sheets or cash flows or projections. It was a P&L, like running a business, but building a market in India. As time went on, this business grew. We had a good team. The market was growing. And I was losing interest in just being part of that because certain businesses are very niche. They not as exciting as time grows. But what happened in 1999-2000 is where the dot-com bubble came. Everybody was doing startups. And in India also, this whole thing started. And my mentor and, Mr. Praveen Gandhi, who was also part of Hindutron at the time and had worked very closely in building Hindutron with my father for over 40 years, said, hey, let's get into the entrepreneurial ecosystem as investors. And he started a fund called Infinity. At that time, I didn't join him, but he kept me in the loop. And in 2006, after the whole dot-com bust happened, he said, come on, we should build out this ecosystem again in India. All the VCs had vanished by then. There were founders, but there was no real, investing ecosystem in the startup space. So we were in 2005. Since I'd come from many years in the Valley and had studied at Stanford, he thought I would be good at this and I would enjoy it. So he pulled me in and I warned him that I'm not a numbers person. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I just love to build products and sell products.
Right.
But the first company he introduced me to was a company led by a young man on a red bus. And I was thinking, I have no idea of what is intercity bus travel in India. Since college, I've never really, done a bus trip. And why are we looking at funding this kind of plan? But once I heard him, I saw the possibilities of a simple business model innovation on the backs of technology that was just coming in, which is the internet technology. You have to remember, internet only was born literally in 1995. It came to India in a big way in after 2000s. So internet was still a new technology. And while it is today ubiquitous, at that time, using internet and data to build a very commonplace business like selling bus tickets was actually quite an innovation. And that's what drew me in. And I said, we should not box ourselves into what we have studied or what you've done initially in your career. But the real challenge for a good student or a good entrepreneur is to meet the unknown. And as a VC, every day you meet the unknown,
Yeah.
something you would have never thought of. And that's why it's a fresh idea. I have not regretted it one bit since then, and ever grateful to Mr. Praveen Gandhi to have pulled me into that meeting, which got me into a completely different career.
That's incredible. I like that note of meeting the unknown because that stands for the best of the work that we do as investors. 2006 to now is obviously a long time. You've seen a lot of different cycles in the ecosystem. What's changed in this time?
So this is now about 18 years ago, 2005-6, when we received seed fund and we funded our first company. Firstly, the fund was called Seed Fund. And today people ask me, but what was the name of your seed fund? Because seed fund now is a verb. We were the only one. Indian Angel Network or Mumbai Angels started just around that time. Even a lot of other funds like Nexus started just after we did. So we were really pioneers in starting the ecosystem, which had a brief stint in 1999 to 2002. What has changed today is that it is evolved to have many more funds, much more capital available for early stage founders. But more than that, non-linear progression is the nature of founders and the end goals of investors. When we started, we could not even imagine any of our portfolio companies going IPO. We wished that they would, but we did not have any data or any role models like Google. We did not have many rock star founders whom we could use to inspire other founders. It was all greenfield. We really were building the ecosystem. So the founders also were not that many. The intangible that has changed today is the founder temperament, the founder confidence, and the founder's aspirations. The founders we had were almost reluctant entrepreneurs. They were so keen to build something that they reluctantly became entrepreneurs. There was no pull. That has completely changed today. I'll give you a quick anecdote. In 2007, we had funded a company with two founders from IIT IIMs. The founders were very bright. They were from humble backgrounds, middle-class backgrounds. And one day at our office in Worli, one elderly gentleman walked in and he asked for me specifically. I was on their board. And he came in looking rather anguished. And he said, please not give so much debt to my future son-in-law. And I said, we don't do that. We are equity, we are venture capital funds. He actually had no idea what is equity financing. He had worked in a bank all his life. He was hoping he would be working in a Texas Instruments or an Infosys or a TCS, which he was before he started this company. And he was like, you have given him all this money and how is he ever going to repay? At that time, 5 crores. And actually, he got out of that company because his father and father-in-law were so against him being an entrepreneur with so much debt on his head. He had no debt at all. But they could not grasp this whole concept. From there to today, where if your future son-in-law is a startup founder, it's definitely an added bonus. So we've come a really, really long way. The ecosystem has matured. The ecosystem is enriched. Of course, with that comes some perils of a lot of fluff and some amount of glamour and glitter, which may not always be reflective of what lies in store for a founder. It's all not rosy, as you're well aware. The journey is very difficult. But today, there are role models, there are heroes. And if you say that, you have a son-in-law who will be, like a Vijay Shekhar Sharma or, Guri Nair. It's something to be proud of. Even for investors, I think there's a lot more trust because the quality of the founders has improved. Yes, we do have examples of founders who may not be role models because they may not always have done the right things. But that's an outcome of any expanding. By and large, I think founders are wanting to build companies, not necessarily just wanting to make money. Investors want to support founders who really want to build out companies which will give returns. But I think there is more pragmatism, there is realism. We've gone through that whole cycle of having unrealistic expectations. We've had several bubbles, we've seen downfalls. So I think all that cumulative experience and knowledge has added a very mature dimension to the ecosystem. And when you invest as a venture capitalist in a company or a team, it's not just about the math, it's about the chemistry because we have to build things together. It's like a partnership, like a marriage, and it cannot be simply transactional. It's heartening to see that there are many of these relationships where founders and their investors really trusting each other, confiding, being quite honest with each other. Yes, there are examples where you will hear opposite stories which are not so pleasant, but that's in any industry which has gained size and scale. There is still a little bit more of maturing that needs to happen for us to be on par with many other ecosystems that we look up to. And I think we have already done a bit of it in the last couple of years where more rationality has prevailed. Valuations, exits, team building, corporate governance, all that is becoming as important as the amount of capital you've raised or the valuation that you've gotten and the kind of exits that one anticipates. So I think a realism has set in. There is still some learning to be done. I think even as venture capitalists, we need to be aware of, the ecosystem that we function in. It's not a China. It's not a Bay Area. It's not even an Israel or a UK. In India, as we are all aware, there is no one India, right? Within India, we have Bharat. We have the metros. We have the MSMEs. We have very, very different types of ecosystems, not just at consumer. As investors, we also have a lot to learn. We cannot expect returns that maybe some of our portfolio in other geographies are giving, or what we have seen happen in countries like China. We have a government, a judicial system, a banking system, regulators with whom we don't like at all, but we do have them. You have to be cognizant that you have to work together with them. We hear a lot of complaints. We do work in India. But just as the software industry grew, I think the startup ecosystem has grown despite all the complexities we have in our country. That's a real badge of honor for all stakeholders, including the government and the regulators. Can we do better? Of course, infinitely more. But look at where we've reached just in the last 15 years. We are still a very young teenage ecosystem.
That was a really incredible landscaping that you provided, Paula. And I want to flip that question and say a lot has changed. To your from your vantage point, what hasn't and what should have changed by now?
That's a great question, Maya. I often think about this. Where we could have been and what we could have changed. As a country, we are not great risk takers. And while we have great founders and also good investors, I think we don't have enough participation from, let's say, corporates who could be early adopters of some of the quote unquote even failed products of the startup ecosystem. Because of that, we are always reticent in taking disruptive risks. So the disruption we've had is primarily because we created a fantastic telecom network and UPI, on backs of which startups have created disruption in the way we do transactions, e-commerce, financial transaction, and so on. But have we really built something which is unique to the world? And have we been able to create a global footprint? We haven't. It's because early adoption in India is still not easy. We got into e-commerce when we had seen a lot of it happening elsewhere. It took a while because we didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle. We didn't have internet all over the country. We changed with a lot of good telecom players, especially with Jio. We did not have online payments, which changed with UPI. There were step changes, and this all resulted in a disruption. But original disruptors, which could create a global impact, we still don't have. We have not come up with any original technologies, whether in software or in hardware or in any other field, that we can proudly say has changed the world. I'm hoping the next 10 years, if we talk again, we will be able to talk about that. We also haven't done enough to address very large problems of India. I don't mean problems of poverty or alleviation or illiteracy and so on. The government has to do most of it. But there are problems like pollution, like manufacturing, like waste management, like climate and sustainability, energy. This next decade, I'm hoping we'll see startups addressing these issues with first principles, not as a Me Too solution, which may take time. We need bold founders, but we also need patient investors who can be part of the
longer journey
with eyes firmly on creating long-lasting technologies which can have global footprint. Global footprint, not just for the heck of it, but because that would give us scale, size, and sustainability.
Yep.
And some pride.
For sure. Just to come back to what you were talking about before, the funder-founder relationship is a really interesting one, especially when you think about the role that investors play, their ability to guide, their part on a board. This is something that I know is very close to your heart. So I'd love to hear about your own learnings working as both a cheerleader, a board member, but at the same time, an investor with fiduciary responsibilities, and having done this for such a long period of time.
The funder-founder relationship is so core to to building out this ecosystem that I tried to sketch out for you.
Yeah.
When we get into this relationship, like anything, in the beginning, there is always hope.
Yeah.
Things always don't go smoothly, right? And no entrepreneurial journey, which is meaningful,
is predictable.
Predictable, external changes happen. Then there are, mistakes that we make as investors and as founders in the journey, because either you misjudge what you think you can do, and you don't know the consumer. A lot of things change also while you're building a product or while you are doing product market fit. For early stage investors, all these are great risks. So you have to be a cheerleader, because when the founder is faltering, you want to make sure that they find the right guidance, the right resources. So you automatically become a mentor. This is a woman in investing network. I want to say that we have strong motherly instincts, which I think are great as a good investor, because you want to nurture, but you also want to make sure that you keep on track, right? That you keep your fiduciary responsibility and also the responsibility to the company that you're building. So you have to detach the founder from the company, and you have to detach yourself as a mentor from the fund, because you really need to make sure that what you've invested for is to build a company that will create value, that not just valuation but value. This can be tricky. While you early on always cheering the founder and you maybe build a very strong relationship, you can even get a little bit personal, because you start empathizing with the founder. You know what they're going through, but at some point you have to be the disciplinarian to say what you're doing is complete nonsense. We really cannot afford this kind of hires, for example. We have to make tough calls. I remember one board meeting of a company that I was passionately involved in. It was a woman founder who had really worked very hard, had sacrificed a lot of things. So I had high level of empathy. It was also in my early days as an investor. I had a very good strong relationship with her. She really counted me, as she was very young, as a mentor whom she could confide in and was quite close to. But I knew she was missing out on many things. She was missing the big picture. She was not paying attention to details. She was getting carried away. We had tried to tell her, and she was not able to take feedback. So in one board meeting, I really was very rough with her. I said, you don't know your numbers. You don't know where you are going. We'll have to shut the company if you don't fix this by the next board meeting. She was so upset because she did not expect me to say that. It was hard for me to do. I don't think I planned it, but I really felt that if I don't say it now, we will be finished.
Yeah.
To her credit, she is a very resilient founder. She took on the challenge, and we as a board were really heartened to see her very well prepared next board meeting. She had actually delivered on her numbers, and she continued to do well after that. You can really play a strong positive role as an investor and a mentor to shape a company's future. Same thing goes when the company really needs to shut down. We're dealing with a company, post COVID, they just lost their business model. They tried very hard. They're not able to build it up again. So, we are actually giving a lot of counseling to the founders to say, it's okay, but let's just close this so you can move on.
Yeah.
And give them positive support. If the founder has tried their best and for external reasons the company's failed, it's okay. It's also our job as investors to be there for a failing company. But if they are good founders, you will fund them again. And if you have been good to them, they will come to you again when it's a winning idea. The win-win formula works everywhere, right? Whether it's in personal relationships, it's in business, or it's in a funder-founder relationship. So a couple of my founders who actually didn't give us great returns, but tried their best.
Yeah.
They have become investors now. We have a great relationship. If I call them in the middle of the night, they would do anything for us, for any of us, investors or we have supported. Same thing goes for us. Some of the founders have been very good. I think when we got an exit, they actually gave us more than what we could have got on paper, because they felt we were early supporters and we really worked with them.
Right.
So it works both ways. Of course, there are times when things go sour and you can't always have a perfect relationship. It's part of the game. Just as in our VC model, we say out of 10 will give us home runs, 5 will give us medium returns, and 3 or 4 will zero down, right? So we should also expect that, after all, it's human relations as well.
Yeah.
And it's complex. So everything may not always work out for founders and for investors. It's best to be transparent. We have to also explain to the founders that we have to give returns to our investors. Just as they have to be good to their customers, we have to be good to our stakeholders. And we have to try our best to get us to give very good returns. And to try, every company for us should be a 100x company. If it doesn't work, fair enough, but that doesn't mean you don't aspire for it. That's where sometimes founders don't like to think about exits. They just want to go on building. They have to understand that money comes with a cost. If you are able to explain that model to them, then some of the boardroom tension diffuses. And we've had founders who will say, oh, VCs don't understand. They're not founders. They don't understand how we are attached to our company. We don't want to sell or we don't want to exit. That builds in a bit of a pressure. I think clear communication and transparency is the key. We have seen some examples in our own ecosystem where governance goes for a toss because either the investor or the founder is not being transparent. And that's because of trust deficit. So the core is building trust. So
lots of great insights from what you just shared. We're going to finally close with very quick rapid fire. So if you're ready, I'll jump in. An investor whose work inspires you.
I would say 2 investors. One is Khosla, and one is a small fund out of the Bay Area called Ulu Ventures. They're actually founders along with me of Stanford Angels, and they're very purpose-driven investors. We talk about purpose-driven companies or founders. They're purpose-driven investors, but they're very disciplined on their returns. So I would say both of these.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but I'll ask again. Your personal professional shout out, anyone who you'd want to call out who got you here?
Well, that's Praveen Bhai. I cannot.
I figured as much.
Not be grateful to him for sure.
If you weren't,
I will say all my founders. They keep me going.
If you weren't an investor, you would be?
I would be a founder.
It's an eternal shift in our minds. Which one would we like to be? Where is it more exciting? A book that you read recently that you'd want everyone to read?
There is this the Murakami book, Norwegian Spring. It's really beautiful but very inspiring book on just the world around us, which is very chaotic right now. So Murakami always inspires. And the second one, it's an epic book called Covenant of Water.
Yes.
which got very complex stories, but told very simply. And I think as a founder, if you can present your plan, complex plan in a simple way, that's the most difficult thing to do.
That's a really interesting corollary. I'd never thought of it that way. Finally, you've been doing this for well over a decade, almost 2 decades now. What still excites you?
Meeting interesting founders and also waiting for the new disruption, the excitement of something new. That we just met somebody in the morning who, was talking of a completely different model, not using generative AI, but using a technology that will actually change the way we do healthcare. So something that is a moonshot idea,
Yeah,
but with pragmatic legs.
fantastic. Paula, thank you so much. This has been such a gripping conversation. There are just so many different insights and nuggets to take away from all of your time. Your very considered thought around how the ecosystem has evolved and where we need to go. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Maya. I want to close by just saying one more thing that I would love to see change in the ecosystem is to have more diversity on both sides of the spectrum. As founders, investors, and general stakeholders, let's bring in more diversity and make this even more vibrant an ecosystem.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on the Women in Investing podcast, Champions with Checkbooks. Take care, everyone.
This podcast is produced for information and community building purposes. If you wish to learn more about our network, please reach out to us through the buttons here. Thank you for tuning in and see you another time.